People Before Profit TD Richard Boyd Barrett has returned to the Dole after being treated for throat cancer. He told the Hard Shoulder here on Newstalk updated equipment would make a significant difference.
So with the newer machines, there's a fairly significant potential of lessening the side effects that people will actually have. And those side effects can be lifelong in some cases. They can certainly be very, very long term.
Donald Trump says Democrats won a number of local elections yesterday because of anger at the US federal government shutdown. Zora Mandani is the new mayor of New York, upsetting former Governor Andrew Cuomo. That's it for now. More in an hour.
Imagine heartburn protection that lasts up to 24 hours. From first thing in the morning to last thing at night. Don't just imagine. Nexium Control gastro-resistant tablets provide up to 24-hour uninterrupted heartburn protection. Nexium Control 20 milligram gastro-resistant tablets. Ask your pharmacist. Contains esomeprazole. Used for up to 2 weeks. Always read the label or leaflet.
Newstalk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Forget the frost. It's time to warm up your winter with Ryanair's low-fare flights to Lanzarote, Gran Canaria or Tenerife.
Misty this evening, some showers, and some of those showers will be heavy in the south. Lowest temperatures tonight down to only about 13 degrees. Now you're up to date on Newstalk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball. This is Newstalk.
Good evening, you're welcome along to Wednesday night's Off the Ball. It's Eoin here with you until 10 o'clock tonight. Coming up, we're going to be speaking to Lance Williams from 8 o'clock. He was one of the journalists at the centre of uncovering the Balco scandal. This week, Victor Conte passed away. He was the person who ran the show, really, when it came to the Balco laboratory. One of the biggest doping stories of the century. One of the biggest ever when it comes to professional sports in the United States. And Lance Williams is one of the journalists in the epicentre of it all. So speaking to him after 8 o'clock from 8:30, Chris Jones of the BBC is going to join us for Wednesday Night Rugby. And in that slot, we're also going to be hearing from Eddie Jones, who our own Susanna Mullen has been speaking to over the last hour or so. Eddie Jones, of course, in Dublin this week before Japan play Ireland in our second November test of this window. From 9 o'clock then, the football show coming your way. We'll be keeping you up to speed on everything that happens in tonight's Champions League fixtures. And Dan Bardell is going to talk to us ahead of Maccabi's visit to Aston Villa tomorrow night, which has come with a whole cloud over it. So we'll get the latest from him and the background to the story there. Our number is 0879 180 180, and you can get us on WhatsApp. Cameron Hill, a very good evening to you.
Good evening, Eoin.
And Richie Towell is in studio with us as well. Richie, how are you doing?
All good. Thanks for having me in.
So from 7:30 this evening, we're going to be speaking to Liam George, who would have played in the under-18 Ireland team that won the Euros in 1998. This is one of Brian Kerr's superstar underage teams. Obviously, we've got the under-17s flying it at the moment in Qatar. They won their first game earlier on, so that is the hook for getting Liam George on. Himself and Robbie Keane were up front as they won that competition. He scored the winning penalty, in fact, against in the final in Cyprus that year against Germany. But we recorded this just before we came on. This is a fascinating conversation about young players in football right now, and Liam George basically says, you can shove your opinions where the sun don't shine. I've got something going on in my life which you can't take away from me. So he felt that a lot of coaches didn't really get the best use out of him. They had certain opinions about him, and he had certain opinions about himself. He's since become a physiotherapist, and that is his job right now. And he says the fact that he went back to college, got a degree, became specialised in physiotherapy is a very black and white thing that football doesn't always provide you. This is an objective thing that he has in his hands. I am a physiotherapist. And in a way, the fact that opinions dominate the game of football, that was one of the motivating factors behind it, which I just thought was such an interesting thing to say. Richie, I would say you'd probably agree with the idea that a lot of managers have their opinions, and those opinions could be totally wrong.
Yeah, but that's what football's all about, isn't it, Eoin? You know, one manager can think you're the best player in the world, and the next manager can think, no, he's not for me. One manager can think you're the best player in the world, the other manager can think, no, he's not for me. So it's all about, for me anyways, when I was playing, is believing in myself, making sure that I know how good I am, because I always think that the cream rises to the top no matter how good you are as a football player. So, as I said, football is about opinions. one manager can want a striker who's a big target man, holds the ball up well, brings people into the game. Another manager can want a striker that runs in behind. So different opinions. It doesn't really matter. Once the player is mentally strong, he should be well able for it. And then, as I said, the cream does rise to the top.
Do you have to tell yourself that my opinion is always correct? I am the guy for this job, and ignore the managers who say that you're not?
Yeah, look, you can't ignore the manager completely, but like, I've played under some managers where he makes you feel like you're on top of the world, makes you feel like you are the best player. And then other managers, you always have a feeling at the back of your head that he's just waiting on the opportunity to take you off or take you out of the team. So you have to be on top of your game at all times. But I think it really comes down on, once you're doing the right things, you're going to bed early, you're eating properly, you're training hard, then the level of performance will come. And if the level of performance comes, managers can't leave you out of the team.
Yeah. One of the other things that Liam is going to talk to us about, and we'll hear from at 7:30, is the idea that seems to be creeping in around the loneliness of modern players. Like, to call it an epidemic is too strong a word, but compared to players of 20, 30 years ago, especially the Irish players in England, it does feel that there's a bit of solitude creeping in. He said that he worked with the Montserrat national team as physiotherapists, and he saw lads on their phones for hours on end. Yeah. And he says that, like, the Irish players who'd come over to England, they'd be coming from the Irish community, which is, you know, pub-based, and he's not condoning getting young players into the pub to have a rake of pints to kind of decrease the level of loneliness. But there is sort of a vacuum there at the moment, and it is a very solo pursuit for the young lads going over. And look, I know it's different nowadays. You can't really go over to England until you're 18 years of age, and that will definitely aid this conversation from an Irish standpoint. But still, for the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, it's still going to be a thing for them.
Of course, and I think even back when he would have been playing, that would have been a big culture even in England. After a game, everybody would go for a few points together. I know even a lot of the old school teams, they would have had like Tuesday clubs and stuff like that. So after training, they'd be off on a Wednesday, everybody would go out for a few points with each other. You just can't get away with that anymore. So yeah, that's where the boredom settles in for the young kids on. And for me, I was very, very lucky. I signed for Celtic when I was 15, just turning 16. There was 11 other Irish lads that were playing Celtic from reserve team, under 18s, all the way down. So 11 other Irish lads. So I was very lucky that when I did finish training, we used to go to cinema with each other. We used to go and play snooker together. We used to go bowling. So we had a really, really good core group there that we kind of stuck together so we wouldn't have that boredom. But I know lads who, like that, they went to a Liverpool or they went to a Manchester United, and like that, you'd have lads that are from France, lads are from Ghana, Nigeria, all different parts of the world, that they were just going home. They were watching 2 and 3 movies a night, completing box sets in a week. And then the boredom settles in. Then you start getting, you can gamble online or going down to the bookies, placing bets on horses, and that's when it's a bit of a pitfall for young players when they go away and that loneliness sets in. So I think I genuinely do, and I think the clubs are doing a lot better now, Eoin, but I think the clubs have a big thing on themselves that they need to have, like, stuff on after training for kids like that. Go and try and get your coaching badges, go and do a physio course, go and do a personal training course, some sort of qualification that'll stand to you in the long run, and it'll stop the boredom from settling in.
Like even things like living situations, because everybody who's signed for these particularly Premier League clubs and even Championship clubs, they're loaded. So they're well able to buy their own gaff. Of
course. And
they don't have to get into the digs situation, which was the case for every young Irish footballer.
I was in digs. I was very lucky. The woman and the man, Pam and Angela, I'll give them a little plug. They were incredible for me.
Right.
Made sure I got me driving lessons, made sure that I got me licence, everything, just looked after everything that I ever had to do. But when I went on trial to Leicester, I did. I'm sure it's all changed by now. When I went on trial to Nottingham Forest as well, went to look at the dig situation. There was 13 players living in one of the houses.
You wouldn't be lonely there.
You wouldn't be lonely, but can you imagine the amount of mischief you would have got up there? 13 or 14, 15, 16 and 7-year-olds all living in the one house. As soon as the weekend comes, what do you do? Do you know what I mean? So
as soon as Monday comes.
Yeah, so you can see where the carnage would settle in, and lads kind of would go off track and get sidetracked by other things and stuff like that. Especially, as you said, young players who, like that, they're getting a few quid into the pocket and they think no families, no kids, no mortgage, nothing like that. They're in digs. This is spare money now to go out and do what I want. So you can see that's where the trouble is.
And how many were you the only footballer in that house in your digs?
No, so I was with another Irish lad, Stevie MacDonald, and then I was with an Italian lad, Luca Santanacito. So two really good lads.
Meals cooked for you?
Yeah, she was brilliant. So he was a chef. He was a chef. He owned an Italian restaurant. He did. So we were getting well fed. Probably putting a few kilos on the pasta. So probably had this double-edged sword there. Like.
Yeah. Wow, that's like an ideal situation.
Yeah,
really.
It was brilliant. So Darren O'Dea, he used to live in the same digs. You know, Dermot O'Carroll, who's now assistant manager. Where's the assistant manager? I only seen him recently. He's assistant manager to at a big club now. So they lived in the same one. There was a good few Irish players coming through that they used to put up there because they knew how good the Pam and Angela were with the young players.
And were you a clique, the 16, 17 Irish lads, or were there a couple of stragglers in your group?
Yeah, to be fair, we used to invite everybody along. Yeah. There was a Bulgarian lad that played for us. All the Scottish lads used to come out with us, similar sort of banter and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously the goalkeeping coach Shells now, Paul Skinner, he was there at the time. Graham Curry, who is still playing now in Scotland. So I still have some really, really good friendships from that time. So it was brilliant times. I loved what I did. But I know a lot of lads who went over and didn't have good experiences. They absolutely hated being away from home, got really homesick. But as I said, I was very fortunate that I had the lads there to back me up. Like.
Yeah, really, really interesting. So that's our half seven tonight. We'll be speaking to Liam George at that time, reflecting on 1998 and his career thereafter. We should start with the story today, though, Cameron, in terms of the Republic of Ireland.
Yes, indeed. They got their under-17 World Cup campaign off to a dream start today. Eoin, Colin O'Brien's side were 4-1 winners over Panama in their Group J opener in Qatar. They sit top of the standings on goal difference. That's after Uzbekistan earned a 2-1 win over Paraguay.
You were watching a bit of this?
Yeah, I watched the under-17 earlier. They were excellent, honestly. They were really good. Now, Panama surprised me how poor they were as well. I thought they were really sloppy, especially how they started the game, trying to play out from the back, but just didn't have the quality to do that. And then I think there's had to be a big thing made of it, isn't it? The amount of first team minutes that the underage Ireland team have. So they have so many thousand first team minutes play, like proper men's football, and you could kind of see the difference there. The likes of Michael Noonan, he led the line like a proper striker. It was brilliant. He played like a proper man, got his goal, hit the crossbar early on, and just anything good that Ireland done kind of went through him. He was really good.
Because obviously this competition has expanded massively. Yeah. I think it's doubled in size compared to the last time the competition was held. It's gone from 24 to 48. Is this a special generation of Irish footballers, as well as it being easier to qualify?
Yeah, it looks like a bit of both. That's what, when I was watching it, I was thinking, these lads are 16, 17 years of age, and they were so impressive. Honestly, the way they played the game, they had there was a good Rovers contingency there, a good League of Ireland contingency, so absolutely brilliant to see. And I think that's where it's standing to the League of Ireland now, that lads can't go away. Like what you said, they have to wait until they're 18 years of age to go. And I think it's brilliant, not just for the players, but for the League of Ireland as well. And we need to take full advantage of that. And like that, go and play Michael Noonan in every game. I know Rovers obviously have big squads, the likes of Rory Gaffney, very experienced players going to play. But for me, I'd love to see just throw Michael out every single week, because it's a natural goal scorer. And for me, I think he's probably the biggest talent that we have coming through at the moment.
Okay, right. Very exciting times for the under-17s. On to tonight's Champions League then, Cameron.
Well, Manchester City striker Erling Haaland returns to his former club Borussia Dortmund tonight. The Norway international has 17 goals from 13 games in all competitions so far. He moved to the Etihad from Dortmund in 2022 and says it'll be nice to see some familiar faces in Germany.
Of course, it's a special match. When I think back of all my memories, there's so many good memories with them 2.5 years. I played there, and yeah, it's a special game.
There are 3 changes to the City side from Sunday's win over Bournemouth. John Stones, Tiani Reinders and Savinho come into the side, with Ruben Diaz, Bernardo Silva and Rayan Cherki dropping out.
Okay, elsewhere tonight then, Cameron.
Well, Newcastle manager Eddie Howe says his team must become more consistent if they're to have a successful season. They host Athletic Club at St James's Park on the back of a 3-1 defeat against West Ham in the Premier League at the weekend. Howe's taken a measured approach to tell his players what he wants from them.
I think whenever you produce a type of performance that we did against West Ham, you want to use it as a turning point. But right acts, I don't think help. It just lets you let off steam. I think you've got to be articulate, and you've got to communicate your points well to the players so they understand actually what you didn't like and what they've got to do better.
Two changes from that defeat against the Hammers. Kieran Trippier, who missed the weekend through illness, comes in for Emil Kraft, while Harvey Barnes replaces Jacob Murphy in the starting lineup.
In the early game, which you're watching at the moment, it's currently Qarabağ 2, Chelsea 2. Alejandro Garnacho has just equalised for Chelsea in that game with a really good strike. Estevao with the other goal for the visitors, and Pafos are beating Villarreal 1-0 after 76 minutes. So that would be a huge result for them if they were to get all 3 points in one of the early fixtures.
Aston Villa captain John McGinn, meanwhile, has agreed a new contract with the club today. The Scotland international signed a deal until the summer of 2028. He's played almost 300 times since moving to Villa Park from Hibs 7 years ago. And there's contract news here at home as well. Drogheda United have secured the services of Conor Keeley for next season. The defender returned to Kevin Doherty's side this season after a loan spell with Premier Division rivals St Pat's. He was the top goal scorer for the Clareton Blues this term, with 8 goals in all competitions.
Now then, we will have plenty of rugby in the middle hour tonight. Chris Jones is going to join us for Wednesday Night Rugby, and we'll hear from Eddie Jones, as I say, who's in town coaching Japan against Ireland this Saturday. What's been going on today in terms of Ireland, Cameron?
Well, the big news from an Ireland perspective came last night, Eoin. That's that Tadhg Beirne successfully appealed his red card from last weekend's defeat to New Zealand. If you remember, the Munster captain shown a yellow for that tackle on out-half Bowden Barrett early in that game in Chicago. Upgraded to a red after a lengthy bunker review, but following an independent disciplinary hearing last night, the red card was rescinded and Beirne is now available for selection for the weekend. Meanwhile, assistant coach Johnny Sexton has explained why he's been sampling coaching from a wide range of different sports in recent months. Shamrock Rovers boss Stephen Bradley revealed last month that the former out-half had been observing their training out in Roadstone. Sexton also divulged that he had been in with Premier League team Brentford, AFL side Adelaide Crows and Rugby League outfit Canberra Raiders.
Yeah, I've tried to do it as much as I can in different sports over the last 6 months. Sometimes when you're go into coaching, you're very one-way thinking, because all you've known is probably 2 or 3 coaches that have influenced you the most, and you try and get their messaging across. But there's other ways and other methods out there in other sports that are invaluable to someone like me that's very inexperienced in coaching. So watched him coach, watched them train, watched them prepare. Did the same with Brentford. When was that? It was the week before they played Man United anyway. I was tempted to leak some of the what they were doing, but I didn't. And was with Aussie Rules teams over in Australia while I was there, Rugby League as well. So just trying to learn as much as I can. I know I'm very lucky to get into an environment like this probably too early in a coaching career, but when you're in there now, you have to make sure that you're as good as the role suggests. So good bit of development, I suppose, is the right way to put it.
Yeah, so kicking from open play has become more important in rugby, and throwing from dead balls has become more important in football. That is the Johnny Sexton crossover there. We need Johnny Sexton up before every single big game. Like, there's absolutely no danger to it. He's not giving away any state secrets there. But given he's still so close to the point where he's actually retired, you just listen to every single word he has to say. A fascinating press conference. I haven't heard the full thing, but we'll play a little bit more of this after 8 o'clock tonight as well. Meanwhile, you've got more news from a rugby standpoint, Cameron.
Well, the IRFU have revealed that concussion rates at schoolboy level have risen by 8% in the past 2 seasons. The union published its injury surveillance report today, as well as its latest findings from the 2-year trial on reducing the legal tackle height in club and schools rugby. National Rugby Development Manager Colm Finnegan says an overwhelming majority in the Irish rugby community felt the sport needed to be made safer.
We knew from engaging very early on that 79% of our stakeholders, so across match officials, coaches, players and even supporters, that 79% would go and feel that the game could be safer with a lower tackle height. On the back of that, following the trial, we also re-engaged with people through surveys and interviews, and a lot of the things that have come back being positive. There's areas of learning within that and how we interact with people, but overall I think the numbers in around 69% feel that the game has been made safer across all of those stakeholders, and it's something that we're going to continue to do to make sure that we're communicating appropriately to each stakeholder group within it.
Cameron, you were at this earlier on today. We were having the discussion a few weeks back about the lowering of the tackle height and how it actually hadn't led to fewer concussions in the game from the research that World Rugby had done. However, this seems to lie in the face of that a little bit in terms of what the Irish have done?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of sort of mixed kind of messaging around that. Conrad Smith of the World Rugby, the chief of rugby operations, basically said that that's going to be negligible at elite rugby, that the reduction in high tackles won't matter as much as just limiting the exposure of players overall. But this was very interesting. There was some really good stuff today from Professor Ian Kenny, who led the research on this, and the medical officers from the IRFU, Rod McLaughlin, as well as Katrina Yeomans. And the stats that came out were very interesting just on the reduction in concussion rates. So there's a 33% reduction in men's AIL, while there's an 18% reduction in concussion in women's AIL. But as I said, 8% up in concussion rates at schoolboy level. Now, we were given a good briefing as to how they came to those figures, and it's all been reported from the referees. So there's a recognise and report system in Irish rugby at the moment where the referees are the ones who determine whether a player is concussed or not. On the safety issue, as Colm Finnegan mentioned there, 69% overall feeling that the sport is safer. Only 49% of players feel that. So there are still shortcomings with how the IRFU approaches its concussion policy, which is still one of the better ones in terms of a union by union based concussion protocol. But for instance, speaking to a couple of players who've suffered concussions and their experience of it, they feel that there's not enough done in the sort of return to play process around, like, tackle technique seems to be a big reason why players end up concussed. You're only taught how to play or tackle when you're 7 as a boys player. I learned how to tackle when I was 7 20 years ago, and then it's not really like readdressed or refined. If you think of how rugby's changed over 20 years, like, you do need to maybe have a bit of a refresher, and the IRFU are looking at that and want to bring that in. Ultimately, it's going to come down to coaches and whether they actually implement that. But also, there isn't really a great discussion among players around their concussion, because when you talk to different players, no two sets of symptoms are the same. Everyone seems to experience a different thing with concussion, and I think there's a little bit of a reluctance to talk about it. Maybe it's the dirty little secret in rugby. You don't necessarily want to acknowledge it. There's a little bit of vulnerability that comes with that. Do players who are maybe competing with other players for the one position on the team want their teammates to know that they have concussion issues, and it might be tricky? That's something one player raised with me. So maybe there does need to be a greater dialogue and a greater emphasis on actually having this conversation and understanding what it is the players are going through, because ultimately the tackle height will only go so far, you have to feel.
Yeah, it is fascinating to kind of consider the differences between the amateur game and the pro game as well, because I'm sure at the very top of the game they're all being coached very well how to refine their tackles so that they're not reduced to 14 men for 10 minutes or 20
exactly
minutes.
You go to tackle school if you get a red card, but it's not the same when it comes to actually safety.
That seems to be the case. Something like this can often get buried in the middle of an international window, so we do our best to come back to this at some point, if not after the international window is actually over and Ireland's final test is played. Just before we wrap up, Cameron, we've time for a few more stories.
Yeah, Niall Fitzgerald is set to become the new manager of the Tipperary senior footballers own. The Nina Guardian reporting today that the former under-20 boss's name will go before the executive of Tipperary GAA. Formal ratification is expected at the November County Board meeting later this month. He'll fill the vacancy left by his former teammate Philly Ryan after his sudden passing last month. And 7-time Grand Slam tennis champion Venus Williams has been given a wild card for the Auckland Classic in January. It means she'll return to the WTA Tour at the age of 45. She's not played a tournament outside North America since competing in a grass court event in Birmingham back in 2023.
Also as well, that Rory McIlroy story.
He thinks Live Golf's move to 72-hole tournaments is a peculiar choice. The breakaway competition announced yesterday that they'll be changing from 3 rounds to 4 rounds in his bid to be eligible for world rankings points. McIlroy feels 3-round tournaments aren't what has been holding back the Live Tour, and he feels organisers are doing what they had to do.
Are they changing the name?
Yeah, because I didn't know Live had to do with the 54.
Yeah, LXII? LXXII?
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't really roll off the tongue quite as well as Live Golf.
No, smarter marketing gurus than me will find a way around maybe making that palatable.
Lexi sort of golf or something like that?
Lexi Tour.
The Lexi Tour is what it's going to be renamed as. Cameron, thank you for tonight's news round. Still to come from 7:30, Liam George will join us for a chat reflecting on the time when Ireland won the 1998 Under-18 European Championships. After 8 o'clock, we'll be talking all things rugby, the football show with Richie Towell coming after 9 o'clock. And before all that, it's time for the Cash Machine.
News Talk's Cash Machine.
Now, after another huge winner last Friday, the Cash Machine has been reloaded for this week with another record prize amount. The number you need to know is €263,000 exactly. And there are two ways you can enter. You can visit newstalk.com.